Julianne, which is room 1010? Is that our deliberation room?
1010 is the deliberation room. 1030, this room back here, is now storage.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the briefing session of the Utah Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining on June 26, 2019. We are pleased to have our director with us today. Mr. Baza, would you please proceed?
Thank you, Chairman Gill, and welcome members of the board to your meeting in Salt Lake City. My name is John Baza. I'm the director for the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining. And before we start our briefing agenda, the first order of business is to do a ceremony to swear in our newest board member and to reconfirm two of our board members who were confirmed by the Senate earlier. To do that, I'd like to introduce the Executive Director of the Department of Natural Resources, Mr. Brian Steed. And Brian will come up front and do that. As an introduction, I wanted to say that on the day that Brian was confirmed by the Utah Senate, that was the same day that our board members were confirmed. So it was a fine day up at the Capitol. So I'll turn the time over to Mr. Steed, and I think the first order of business is Stephen Church.
That's correct. Thank you so much. So I wanted to say thanks to the board for your willingness to serve and how thrilled I am to be here at DNR. This is my official first month on the job, and this is my first official swearing in. So I've been cautioned not to swear at you. So please raise your right hand. Thank you. I state your name.
I, Stephen B. Church.
Having been appointed by Governor Gary Herbert.
Having been appointed by Governor Gary Herbert.
And confirmed by the Utah State Senate as a member of the Board of Oil and Gas and Mining.
And confirmed by the Utah State Senate as a member of the Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining.
Do solemnly swear that I will.
Do solemnly swear that I will.
Obey and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Obey and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of Utah.
And the Constitution of the State of Utah.
And that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
And that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you.
I have two reconfirmations, or reappointments, excuse me. So if I can have Roland Gill and Chris Hansen. And we're going to do this at the same time.
It's nice to meet you.
You as well. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Chris, good to see you. Okay. So if you both can raise your right hands, please, and repeat after me. I, please state your names.
I, Roland Gill.
Christy Hansen.
Having been reappointed by Governor Gary R. Herbert.
Having been reappointed by Governor Gary Herbert.
And confirmed by the Utah State Senate.
And confirmed by the Utah State Senate.
As a member of the Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining.
As a member of the Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support.
That I will support.
Obey and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Obey and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of Utah.
And the Constitution of the State of Utah.
And that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
And that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Steed. Thank you, members of the board. We certainly appreciate your service. It is something that probably not a lot of people know about, but those of us who do know about it understand the time and effort that you volunteer for the state of Utah. So thank you so much. So to begin our briefing session this morning, I'd like to introduce a presenter who comes to us from Sinclair Oil Company. This is Jonathan Baker, who is a senior landman with Sinclair, and he's going to discuss some pooling situations in the Permian Basin. I think we all understand how active the Permian Basin of West Texas and New Mexico are. And Jonathan has had some experience with that. I'll ask him to come up now. And this comes to us by way of Steve Alder, actually, because Steve attended a presentation by the Utah Association of Professional Landmen. And I'm not sure exactly when that happened, but Steve indicated that this was a presentation that would be good to have in front of the Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Jonathan, and he's got a presentation to give you and a slideshow, so you can explain what the Landman's Association was all about.
Okay. All right, am I live? So Sinclair, the presentation I gave was in April this year to the Landman Association, and I guess Steve thought I did a poor enough job I should get some practice and do it again. So here I am. But what I want to talk to you about is a leasing play that had a unique regulatory twist to it for Texas. And Steve thought it might be something to think about when you guys have been looking at your pooling. So as my slide is titled, we've been fighting for leases inch by inch in an urban Permian Basin area. I want to first orient you, and I don't know how well I can use this thing, but no, I won't use that. Orient you. We're in Howard County, Texas. There's a blue indicator light up there in the upper right-hand corner of this screen. The city of Midland is about 40 miles a little west of the city of Big Spring there in yellow. Big Spring is the county seat of Howard County. This map, the stick map, shows horizontal drilling that's occurred in the last 5 years. And you can see a significant amount of Wolf Camp and Sprayberry development that's been going on. So a great zip code to be in. And Sinclair wanted to, take a look at this. So I want to take you to the origins of our project. This is a 2015 vintage Tobin map. And what you can see is a lot of blue or gray speckles all over the place. And what you'll notice, or what that is those are all vertical developments that occurred over the past 30, 40, 50, 60 years or so. And then you'll notice a kind of a white spot there in the middle, right where Big Spring is. It's a donut hole. No one's ever drilled there. If you look in the lower right-hand corner on the inset map, the yellow block is our current acreage position with a snapshot of time of 2015. About 100 horizontal wells have been drilled in Howard County, mostly to the west and north of Big Spring. So Sinclair, along with our partners, 4-7s, who we've done several successful deals with, decided let's go ahead and look at this. Now this is a rooftop play, and for those of you who have never heard the term rooftop play, think of it's leasing in an urban environment, and think of looking at an aerial view of a neighborhood and literally counting which rooftops have I leased, which ones have I not leased. And so you go at this, inch by inch, 0.16 acre at a time. So we decided we were going to go ahead and move in on this project, and I'm going to switch over to a drone video. Should it automatically?
He's coming to help.
It's not showing up on the screen, though. So while he's trying to figure that out, the city of Big Spring, even though it's been surrounded by prolific historic production, the citizens really don't know much about oil and gas leasing. So I want to show you a little bit about what we had to deal with. So to orient you, we are flying south to north across the city. You can see
Do
just...
they have grass there?
Yeah, it's nice and green too. But just normal lots. This part of town, you know, there aren't as many abandoned lots, but as we get further on, you'll see more. But just, you know, plain, you know, West Texas town there. We dealt with schools and churches. I'm going to fast forward a little bit because there's no need to watch 9 minutes of this. But you can see up here, I'm going to try to move the mouse around. We have churches to deal with. Up above, we're going to see a school. I'll zoom up there. There's a very large Hispanic population here, which I'll talk about more later, and how some of the challenges that came from that. There was a couple large federal tracts of land, which here you know, is commonplace, but in Texas, it's very rare. Right up here, you'll see the skyscraper in the heart of Big Spring. This is the Settles Hotel, built late 1800s, early 1900s, and a son of Big Spring has done very well for himself, recently bought it, refurbished it, and made a nice hotel out of it. So if you ever get a chance to go, I recommend staying there. Another component that made this challenging is there was a very large railroad, Union Pacific Railroad block out here. We're going to see it right here, just north of the heart of the town. And then as we fly over past the railroad block, you're going to get into the north side of town. And a bit more run down than what we had been flying over earlier. A lot of abandoned lots, very challenging to locate people. If you look on out and about, up on the upper left, you'll see a water tower, which is kind of, and then there's a highway just to our side of the tower. This is where development pretty much had ended, north of this point, by all the operators. No one had really come in to our side of the town. Let me end this, and hopefully I can navigate back properly. Hey. Guess I got it. Okay, so Sinclair, thank you. Sinclair and our partners said, okay, let's go ahead and get started. We want to go ahead and move in here. So we set up office. In the center picture of the collage, you'll see our office there. We located in a high traffic spot right across from Walmart. Figured people would see us there. We advertised in multiple different ways, beyond just the thousands and thousands of doors knocked and letters sent out. We used mailings. We used newspaper articles. We had a couple billboards up there. But something unique we did was had an online presence. In the left-hand page, you'll see a Facebook page that the community uses to talk about community issues. And there we are taught, you know, this particular cutout is showing some discussion going on the leasing of mineral rights that we're doing. The other thing that was very unique is we created a website dedicated for our project where we would try to drive traffic to, where we could explain to the citizens what's an oil and gas lease. Here is an oil and gas lease, a JOA, our AFEs, offer letters, maps, things like that, to help explain and be very transparent with what it is we were doing. And that website is actually still up and running as of right now. For this slide, habla español. I want to illustrate 2 points. One, the large Hispanic population that we had to deal with in leasing. We had up to 15 landmen working the city at one point in time, and we had a couple that were multilingual that could help out. One in particular, we moved down from the Fort Worth area to live out here with his family, inserted him into the community, and built quite a relationship of trust, and has really flourished. He runs our main office there. The other thing, as I explained previously, the citizens really didn't know much about what it is we were doing. They didn't even know they had mineral rights. So we had to come up with flyers, FAQs. These are images of a postcard that explained very simply what it is we're trying to do. I mean, a horizontal well goes well below your house, you know, from way out and come underneath. So it's not going to affect your home. What's a lease bonus? What's a royalty? One of the major FAQs that we had to resolve was, if I grant you a lease, am I going to lose my home? And so we did a lot to educate and help people understand. I'm going to take you through a series of slides to show time slices of when we, you know, kind of our leasing activity and mineral acquisition activity. We entitled them our measles maps, because as you'll see little spots start growing and growing and growing. You'll see a lot of, especially in the core of the town, a lot of gray overlapped blobs, and that's the GIS layers on top of these, you know, with these 0.16 acre lots and the roads associated with that. So it makes it a little tough to see. You'll see a lot of sticks with stars and or bubbles. That's horizontal development that's occurred around the town as well. So in May 2016, a couple months after we started, we picked up a couple large blocks. You'll see a few sprinkles of measles in there, but not much. We just started. Moving on to the end of 2016, we've changed our color scheme because we've added leasing as well as minerals, and you can see a whole lot more that's been picked up. I want to point you out to the lower left here. You'll see that same block of land in the horizontal development. But in the year of 2016, about 150 additional horizontal wells have been spud. And they're now coming on the north, slightly to the east, and all of the west part of town. Moving on, about 4 or 5 months later, again, our activity is growing. Our measles are spreading. By the end of 2017, a significant chunk of land, a lot of leasing has occurred, and we've picked up a lot. By March 2018, we've pretty much finished the thrust of our acquisition and leasing efforts. At this point in time, we've picked up about 80% of the minerals available within the core of the city. The vast majority of the 20% remaining are unlocatable. Also, just to show you how prolific this area has become, in that 2-year span that I just showed you, another 600 wells, horizontal wells, have been drilled. Wolf Camp and Sprayberry. And once again, you'll notice there's a donut hole in Big Spring. No one's drilled under it. Everyone's around it. So we had to come up with we had to figure out a way to drill this. So I want to talk to you what I'll just call the Texas two-step. This is a cartoon drawing. The large blue polygon represents a not-to-scale pool or a unit. The red dotted line is a proposed well. The blue small squares are unleased tracts of land. Texas, if I were to drill that red dotted line, I would end up going through, you know, as proposed, I would go through 2 tracts of land that are unleased. Therefore, I would be trespassing, not allowed to do that. So I could ask my drilling engineer to, you know, wiggle around it like that green line would suggest. The problem is that's not good enough. In Texas, you also have to remain 330 feet away from any unleased tract of land. That yellow polygon inside there represents 330 on each side of the wellbore, so 660 feet across. So for those tracts that are in red circles, I've got to stay 330 away from them or obtain what's called a Rule 37 waiver. And a Rule 37 waiver, for those of you that don't know what that is, basically is a waiver that the commission can grant so that you would be allowed to produce in that interval when you're within 330 feet. There's no guarantee you'll receive it. So for us, Sinclair, using a standard pooling practice method of voluntary pooling, it would be impossible to develop the city of Big Spring in a sane way. If we were lucky enough to find sufficient, wiggle around and worm through and find a sufficient path so as to avoid trespassing issues through our scattered 20% of unleased, the Rule 37 component could be daunting. We'd have a lot of blank, wasted pipe down there. So it required some out-of-the-box thinking. I operate North Dakota. I handle a fair amount of non-op Oklahoma. I've spent a lot of my career in the western U.S. Texas, in those areas, forced pooling is just commonplace. Texas has a cultural bias, for whatever reason, to forced pooling. And it's a dirty word for them. The commission much prefers that individuals come up with private agreements amongst themselves rather than force upon those individuals a decision without their consent. Despite this cultural bias, when we took our project to our regulatory council, he said, you know what, we're going to force pool. Except we're going to use the Mineral Interest Pooling Act that was enacted in the early 1960s. Long before the concept of horizontal drilling was ever contemplated. For you to understand what we did, I want to explain kind of a standard MIPA unit to you. And I'll term MIPA as short for Mineral Interest Pooling Act. A forced pooling or MIPA event usually occurs after a well is drilled in Texas. There are some limitations onto the size of those units, 640 plus 10% for a gas well, 160 plus 10% acres for an oil well. A common example would be you drill a well and an offset mineral owner who is not part of that unit and is not in any unit can force his way into that unit because drilling his own well would be impracticable. And there's a process that he can go through, and as part of the process, the commission can then prescribe a penalty payout for that interest as well as a royalty that individual will receive. What we did is a reverse MIPA, and reverse MIPA means that we pooled before we drill the wells. A little history. The reverse MIPA is a creation of industry and the commission that started in the mid-2000s in the Barnett Shale in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. There, these large gas wells were being drilled under the city, but you had a lot of, like us in Big Spring, a lot of tracts of land that you could not lease. You couldn't find people for whatever reason. And so rather than let the tyranny of a few that you can't even locate withhold the rest from benefiting from the reserves underneath them, this reverse MIPA was born. Over the next 10 or so years, maybe a dozen reverse MIPAs had been sought after. They're a very rare creature in Texas. Then in 2017, over in Reeves County, over in the western side of the Permian Basin, in the city of Pecos, a company by the name of Colgate started drilling some Wolfcamp oil wells, and they wanted to seek reverse MIPAs under the city of Pecos. And they began to do so. Now, they used 160-acre plus 10% acreage allotment as prescribed. But the city of Pecos is like 7 to 9 square miles, so it's relatively small. They can drill these long, skinny 10,000-foot wells with what I call a straw of a unit, just barely, haloing around the wellbore. But there's sufficient surface area outside of the city where they could then reach underneath the city and drill that. Historically, when reverse MIPAs are sought after, a company looks at the most recently approved template that was used, and then you piggyback off that, and maybe you tweak it a little bit. Well, in our scenario, we needed to change the recipe significantly because we, in Big Spring, we're just over 3 times larger than Pecos. So our ability to drill solely from the exterior of the city is very challenging. We had to drill from within it. Although we're an oil base rather than gas, so we needed the larger units to help do that. So what we did is we married in another aspect of Texas ruling that is a Rule 86. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's a mathematical calculation that tells you based on X amount of feet in a lateral wellbore, you can hold X amount of acres. So rule of thumb, 10,000-foot horizontal will let you hold about 680 acres. So Sinclair proceeded. We went above and beyond the most previously approved Pecos standards. Some of those included, just in our simple part of advertising the newspaper. you're required to do, 3 or 4 weeks. We did 2, 3, 4 times that. Instead of half page, or instead of just standard ads, we did half full page colored ads, wanting to make it extremely obvious to the public what it is we're doing. We spent a significant amount of time trying to find these hundreds, if not thousands, of lot owners that we could not locate. We then sent out reasonable and fair offers, as we're supposed to do under the MIPA, with options such as lease, farm out, and participate. We added our own, sell their minerals if they're so inclined. Tell them what we're going to do if we don't get a response, seeking relief through the commission, and then provide them notice of the hearing. So we went ahead and rolled the dice, and I assure you, industry thought we were pretty crazy to do this. This was pretty drastic. I want to point out some things on here. You'll see some large green blocks of land, namely in the upper left and a little on the lower left here. Those are federal acres. The orange blocks there in the center of town and then on the north end are surface locations. The blue outlined polygons are proposed MIPA units. You'll notice there's a lot of jaggedness to these units, and we did that for ease of administration. We tried to follow natural boundaries such as lot, fences and roads, so as to not have to split a division order title opinion in half on someone's garage. We used the Rule 86 calculations, and we had well lengths ranging from 5,500 to 12,500 plus feet long, which gave us 400 to 700 acre units. The other thing, we had to play Tetris. We had to fit our units within the surrounding units that third-party operators were setting up. So it was quite a challenge. We then sent out our letters, our fair and reasonable offers, to the hundreds and hundreds of unleased tracts of land, and had a significant amount of returns, obviously. Spent a lot of time with the commission going back and forth and trying to locate better addresses and resending those out. Eventually, May of 2018, we presented our case to the commission. We were unprotested. We had significant support from the city, from the school district, from judges, private individuals, a handful of other companies. We even had a handful of citizens show up to say, we're in favor of this. So what seemed like a grueling 5-6 months to wait, we received unanimous approval from the 3 elected commissioners. So now that we had this MIPA order granted on each of these units, what did we really have? Well, the order essentially created a synthetic lease over the unleased tracts, the MIPA tracts. One well in each unit will HBP that entire unit through the entire correlative interval of the Sprayberry Trend, which here is the Sprayberry and Wolfcamp formations, which will allow subsequent drilling in those other benches. The owners who had previously leased to us are not governed under the MIPA. They're governed under their private agreements, their leases with us. The MIPA owners will receive a 25% royalty, and then a reversion will occur after 200%, cost plus 100, which is a statutory maximum allowable. Operators, Sinclair, we don't need to worry about sending AFEs to these individuals because of that. And we also requested the ability to create a sinking P&A liability fund so as to handle, you're not having to chase people down for unpaid P&A bills when the time eventually came, especially with unlocatable owners. So after these reversions occur on a wellbore by wellbore basis, that Sinclair would now be out of that tract. We have no revenue interest there. The mineral owner would be 100%. Thereafter, as the operator, we can net their costs out of their revenue. Again, not having to worry about unpaid bills. The vast majority of the 20% or so unlocatable, we ultimately see being escheated to the state, unless people, clean up some of the records and come out of the woodwork and claim that. But the reverse MIPAs now allow sane pad development underneath the city of Big Spring in a very prolific area. I mean, 600 wells in 2 years, and it's still developing. The school, citizens, municipalities will benefit tremendously. And I'll show you some basic numbers in a moment. And the commission has now opened the door to this type of ruling. We're the only ones with one right now, and who knows when the next one will come. So as it stands, we have 5,000 net acres. 7 wells would HVP the entire project for us. We could ultimately see 100+ wells being drilled under the city. Using some very simple back-of-the-envelope math, basic assumptions, we could easily see, $1.25 billion going to the city of Big Spring over the life of this project. On the school lease alone, almost $250 million. So a huge win-win-win all around for the citizens and for the operator as well, Sinclair. So that's what I have, and if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. But I appreciate the opportunity and time.
Questions, board members?
Just one quick question. The depth of the mining term, the overburden, what's the depth of the producing zone under the city?
Angela, was that about 8,000? 7,500 feet.
And multiple production zones?
Yeah, there are. There's 2 to 3 potential here under the city in the Wolf Camp, and there's 1 or 2 in the Sprayberry, if I remember right.
So 25% was granted to the unlocatables. Did you have leased owners that had less than that were concerned that, hey, was that just unlocatables, or what about those that that would not sign a lease?
Those that would not sign a lease are categorized as as a MIPA tract,
Okay.
as if they were unlocatable.
Did you have any complaint?
We have
Was your
had
regular
0.
leases 25% though?
No, we have a range, a handful of 1/8 where people would ask for a higher bonus, but we range from, I think on average we're about 22 to 23%, so it's not a horrible difference there, but no one's complained.
And no one showed up not a single person to protest?
No
your-
protest,
Wow.
not one at all. No environmentalists,
Must be
nothing.
Texas.
Yeah.
Thank you. Rich?
Are there a lot of such urban donut holes elsewhere in Texas? Is this something that is going to spread, do you think?
You trying to steal our play opportunities?
Just curious. You can
No.
speak in generalities.
No, you're fine. Yeah, there are some other donut holes. We're aware of the city of Midland, for example, has been developed, a group is working on reverse MIPAs there right now. We know the city of Pecos is working on it. We anticipate others will probably follow suit. You think about it, the large lease blocks are gone. So how do you get a toehold into here? Well, this is a tough way to do it, but it can be a very good way to do it if you have the patience and the perseverance and a lot of hard work and organization.
Thank you very much. That was very insightful and creative and ingenious. Appreciate that.
Well, appreciate it. Well, we had a great team working on it, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Appreciate your time.
No problem.
Wish you well in your future development.
Well, thank you.
Board members, our next item on the briefing agenda is to have you experience some of the technology improvements the division has made through work that has been done by Tommy Thompson, a senior GIS analyst for the division, and he's going to show you some interesting drone footage that he's taken down at the Coal Hollow mine in Kane County, and I'll just turn the time over to Tommy.
All right. Tommy, you got an award recently for some high thing. What was that?
So we recently received a Special Achievement in GIS Award from Esri, so the ArcGIS software that a lot of companies use. Our department has a Esri Enterprise license, and so we were recognized nationally. I think there were some 4,000 different companies, a couple hundred states, so we did pretty good. So it's a pretty big award for us, so we're super excited about it. 4,000 different nations. I mean.
Tommy and I will be going to the Users Conference in San Diego next month, and we'll actually receive that award directly from the, I forget his title, the head dude for Esri.
Yes.
Jack Dangerman.
Jack Dangerman, yes. So that'll be exciting. So yeah, there's a lot of different cities and countries that applied for this, and so it was great for us to be one of those that were selected. So we went out to Coal Hollow with Priscilla Burton had invited us out, and we worked with Kirk Nichols down there to conduct the drone flight. And what they were kind of interested in is getting volumetric data, so doing a photogrammic type of flight where we fly a grid pattern and we get a high-resolution orthomosaic map. And then we also are able to get data like a 3D model, and that has a point cloud in it, and a digital surface model, which I'll explain to you a little bit more about those in a minute.
What's an orthomosaic?
An orthomosaic is basically, so we fly over and we took 398 shots. So we have 398 individual images, and then it mosaics those together, and then it ortho-rectifies them. So it puts it in the correct place in the space. So puts it in the correct X, Y, and Z locations on Earth. So that's what that is. And then the volumetric measurements come from those digital surface models and point clouds. So just to show you a little bit of the data collection process, this is our autopilot software called the UGCS, and basically I think I've showed this to you guys before. The drone goes up, flies its grid pattern, mowing the lawn is what we call it, and then as the batteries die, we bring it back home, and then we land it, put new batteries in there, have it continue its flight, and that's pretty much a stickless. I don't ever have to touch the sticks. I hit start with my computer, hit return to home on my computer, and I don't have to ever have real interaction unless there's something going on. So we're using this new software called Pix4D. OSM has just granted us the first license that they've handed out to any state. So we're excited to get that software. That software is typically about $8,000, and so luckily we don't have to pay for that, and we also get to work with those guys in terms of developing our drone program. So this quality report really is just kind of showing that the pixel resolution that we got for that orthomosaic map, that 2D map, is 1-inch pixels, 1.12. So we got really fine detail, and then we covered 293 acres, and so we covered pretty good chunk of land, and we did it in about 2 hours. So here is that orthomosaic that you're asking about, Mr. Chairman. And so that orthomosaic, we had the 398 images. It used all 398, and it created this 2D map that's got a very high resolution. And this over here is that digital surface model, representing red is higher elevations, blue is the lower elevations. So we get a nice little report out of this Pix4D that we can then generate and share. And then I have a quick little video to show you what the point cloud looked like. And I'll kind of just talk you guys through this. This is the point cloud. As you can see, you can kind of see each of those individual points. It's almost like a transparent. But the point cloud is what gives us is elevation data. So this point represents this elevation. This point represents this elevation. And that is basically come out of parallax, so that photogrammic process. Each image kind of overlays. We take them on a 70-degree angle to get kind of these side profiles of those, and then we're actually able to, this is one of the default outputs. We take all those images, put it into Pix4D, and we get this point cloud. So the point cloud is very beneficial, but again, here's this the orthomosaic high resolution 2D maps are very beneficial as well to do basic site surveys. You can determine what's on site, get a snapshot in time. Don't necessarily have to wait for satellites or for airplanes to come do a flight over. And so right here, I'm just kind of zooming in on auger. So their auger is what they're actually using right now. Is they're doing some auger mining. It's pretty impressive. We can actually even even see the blades. This auger bit right here even seems like it's maybe a little bit, maybe that's a shadowing, I'm not quite sure, but you can also see the pile of discarded auger bits and blades. We even get the forks on the forklift. So we get very, very high resolution. That's what the orthomosaic provides to us. And then, again, when we're doing volumes, we can't really use a point cloud because we don't have that surface, so we use that DSM, and that surface model takes each of these points, draws a line, and says, here's your surface, point line, surface, and it did it 40 million times. And so with this, you can clearly see these stockpiles, and we can get these volumes from it. And so let me just kind of speed this up a little bit. So you get this incredible detail. You can see, you know, that coal seam right there. That's almost makes the equipment look like toys out there, but it's definitely not. They're very large. It's a massive site that we were able to cover. So what I did is I basically drew polygons around each one of our volumes, and then those polygons I then estimated volumes for. So what you're seeing is the cut volume, and that cut volume is basically saying, hey, if we were to lop off this pile from the land, then we are going to get a flat surface, and this is how much material it would be. The fill is basically the reverse, saying, hey, here's your highest point, we're going to fill up the bathtub, and that's how much material that would take. And then there's an inherent error. It's just like any other statistical analysis. So there's a volume difference. So it's plus or minus usually about 50 cubic yards to 100 cubic yards. This one I think was about 75. So here we have a couple different algorithms. So I used a triangulated algorithm for estimating volume, and we also have this average, so we can get an average. We can make it custom. We can make a fit plane if we want a certain slope. We can do the highest point, or we can do the lowest point. So those are kind of the different algorithms we use for estimating volumes. So the reason, like I said, we did this was kind of to look at some of the volumes that they already have. So we have their as-built or North Lease facility map. Just zooming in right here is where those stockpiles were proposed. And so you can see right here, the stockpile is got 19,000 cubic yards for this purple arrow. And with ours, we came up about 16,000 cubic yards. This yellow arrow says they have allotted 125,000 cubic yards, and we found that they have 104,000 cubic yards on site. And then this red arrow shows that they have the capacity of going up to 17,000 cubic yards, and this blue polygon shows 9,000. So you can see they're within their as-built plans. So we've begun doing the file sharing process with these guys. We're going to obviously rely on their surveyor to go and ground truth to the data. They have a surveyor and a surveyor stamp, and so we want to make sure we're working close with those guys. We're going to compare our volumes with that surveyor, and then hopefully we're within each other's volume estimates, and if not, then we'll kind of discuss those next steps. So it's been important for us to kind of work with these industries and operators as we develop our program, so that way we can kind of develop our program in a way that they agree with, and that maybe they have ideas that I don't have. And so it's been great to work with Cole Hollow and Priscilla on this. So thanks for your question. Thanks for your time. Any other questions?
Board members, questions on the left, starting with Rich, and we'll just go all the way down.
I'm very impressive. I'm just curious about the accuracy. What is the plus or minus you'd get on an elevation relative to whatever datum you're working off of?
So that's one of the nice things about this PIX40 report is I have it up because I was assuming this question was going to come. So we basically, in the statistics, they give us an RMS error, so root mean square error. So I think we are within, this is in meters, so for our Z value, we're within 2.5 meters of accuracy. Y, we're within 1.7, and with our X, we're about 4 meters off. So we're pretty confident with our location accuracy, which then translates into some of those volume accuracies. And so.
And you had mentioned an absolute volume as your plus or minus. What would that be as a percentage of the stockpile?
It's typically about 1% is what we've been finding, but that's kind of why we're working with that site surveyor, just to kind of make sure that the ground truth data kind of shows that we are within a ground truth plus or minus 1%.
Thank you.
Yeah. Steve.
Say a pixel was it 1 1/4 inches or?
Yeah, 1.12 for this site, and it depends on how high we fly. So if we fly closer, we're going to get better resolution. The higher we go up, the more coarse the resolution.
So you can see something as small as, say, 6 inches. Would be 6 pixels, or is that?
So 6 inches would be 6 pixels. Yeah, that's basically what it would translate into. And so when we do some of our image classification, we're actually finding we actually have to dumb down our data. So we have to image classify off of about 6-inch pixel resolution. Otherwise, we're classifying shadows and sticks and other things that are difficult to use AI to classify out as vegetation, non-vegetation. So, yeah.
For those questions on this side, Chris?
Just a couple of questions. If you have a dispute with an operator over volumes, which one would you rely on? Would you rely on their data or this type of information?
Yeah, so right now we're kind of going through that process. Obviously, I think the tradition's going with their data, and so we're going to keep going with that. They have a paid surveyor on site. They have a surveyor stamp. We don't have a surveyor. This is kind of one of those ways where we're trying to get similar data to what a surveyor would get, but not at the same cost or taking the same amount of time. So we would obviously rely on the operators.
I would assume the goal is to, at some point, get to the point that you could use this flyover to verify and use as, in a situation where an operator says, okay, I've got 4,000 or 45,000 tons of topsoil here, you come up with some other number. At some point, you'd want to be able to use this information and say, no, wait a minute, we don't, we're not in agreement here, we've got an enforcement action, we want to use our own data. Isn't that the goal?
Yeah, I think I would rely on my boss to tell me what to do with that.
I think, and rather look at it as a possible enforcement action, I think it's, if we find great discrepancy between what we're seeing and what they're telling us, it's just another step in saying, well, can you justify the numbers you're coming up with, because we're coming up with something different.
Yeah. Well, I understand. I can see where this could go. In fact, I see one of your inspectors out here in the audience. I'm thinking, hey, why do you need an inspector on the ground?
Yes, that is a very common fear, I think, too. It's not well placed because we take even these high resolution ortho images and we have a 3D model. We were actually working with Wayne Western over Lisbon Valley. There was a black kind of donut on the ground, and I thought it was a barrel. He thought it was a tire. This is why we need an inspector to go out there and look. But it does help us prioritize, areas where inspectors could go look. So it'd save us time in inspections by being like, hey, we're not quite sure what this is, but we can mark it on a map. And then we give them a little map that they can navigate the site with and focus on certain areas and not waste their time on other areas.
And I would say that a drone is still artificial intelligence. I think we need on-the-ground eyes and ears to be able to discern with real judgment what we're looking at.
Yeah, you're a drone operator too, right? So
yeah. I think this is just the beginning of useful technology on these sites. I can see all kinds of potential for good things to be done.
Great, right? That's great to hear. But yeah, as John said, I think as we develop our drone program, I think we're going to keep you guys apprised, attorneys apprised, industry apprised of what we're doing. Kind of make this a collaborative effort before we try to say, yeah, we're going to use our numbers over yours or in concert with yours. So we got a lot of work to do still. So we're just at the technology part, and then you guys will help us with the policy and legal part. So.
Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate that. Just a couple of things that I'll mention before we finish up that are coming up in future calendar. I think that I've reported to you this major study that the Groundwater Protection Council is doing that we've been working on now for 2 years in collaboration with them. The published report came out on Monday of this week, and there is an official website. We issued a press release on it. We're trying to get the word out as quickly as possible that 318-page document is now available. You can either view it online or download it. But for this board, I wanted to tell you that myself and the leadership team, who were the organizers for that report, are going to give you a briefing on that at your July board meeting. We'll be doing it with myself and then 4 members of the team from Oklahoma City who will be connected in remotely. And we'll give you that briefing and we'll talk all about the report and answer your questions. And hopefully by then we'll even have some printouts and executive summaries that we'll be able to give to you for your perusal. But I wanted to point that out to you, that that'll be part of July's briefing session. Then in August, I think many of you are aware of the Uinta Basin Energy Summit, which takes place on the 28th and the 29th of August, which is a Wednesday and Thursday. I would point out to you that the Wednesday coincides with a board day, but I think the Wednesday activities are pretty much just a welcome reception and some meet and greets that evening. So we have several members of the staff who are going to be participating in that. They will drive out after the board meeting that day and spend the night and then attend the Energy Summit on Thursday. Those of you who are interested as board members, we will certainly cover your registration. If you wanted transportation with the division, we accommodate that as well. We can get hotel rooms set up for you. So please let Julianne or myself know if you're planning to do that and to what level you want us to cover your transportation and expenses. So let us know and we'll get that done and arranged for you. And Mr. Chairman, that's all I had today, so unless you have other questions.
Well, that was outstanding. I think I speak for the whole board in telling you how interesting that was. And this groundwater protection program you're in is a game changer. And so we'll be looking forward to that as well. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll be back about 5 after 10 o'clock. Oh, before we do that, there's an opportunity now for public comment from anyone that has an issue that's within our jurisdiction. Seeing none, then we'll take that break. Thank you.